The illusion you can't escape is yourself. We're told to reinvent ourselves, to shift identities, to be delusional. But here's the truth. Real transformation doesn't begin with bypassing. It begins with disillusionment. Hey everyone, it's Veronica. Welcome back. In this episode, we'll explore why identity shifting often fails, why being delusional isn't enough, and how shadow work and soul work open the doorway to authentic change. By the end of this episode, you'll learn why trying to escape yourself often leads to repetition and how meeting your wounds, patterns, and programming is the sacred first step to real freedom. Because only when you face yourself fully can delusion transform into vision. And only then does the impossible become alignment. So let's dive deeper into what I call the illusion you can't escape. We're told to be delusional, to step boldly into a new self, but without disillusionment first, it becomes nothing more than a facade, a way of covering old wounds with a shiny disguise. It's like moving from job to job or relationship to relationship, thinking the next one will finally fix everything. Maybe we buy the new outfit, switch careers, or change our attitude on the surface. But without understanding what's happening in our inner landscape, the conflicts, wounds, and patterns we carry, we end up repeating the same cycles. The problem doesn't disappear. It only gets buried underneath the new attachment, which itself becomes another layer of avoidance. It's not that the jobs or partners are identical, it's that the inner dynamics, the wounds and survival patterns, are still running the show. Changing the outside without facing the inside gives the illusion of transformation, but underneath the same unresolved patterns keep writing the script. Wherever you go, you meet yourself. This is where identity shifting often shows up, the promise of creating a new self, the identity 2.0. When we become dissatisfied with life, it's natural to turn to coaches, books, or podcasts that offer guidance on how to reinvent ourselves. We hear your current thoughts, behaviors, and patterns are tied to your old self. To change, you must consciously create a new self-image. This guidance sounds empowering. It encourages us to take bold, even delusional steps toward embodying a future self that doesn't yet match our reality. Here's the challenge. A lot of identity shifting practices bypass the deeper layers of disconnection. We're told to forget the past, it's behind you. Or the focus becomes fix the habit, change the behavior, replace the thought. But that often means we're trying to fix what we're already avoiding instead of meeting what that avoidance is trying to reveal about us. Think about it. We feel uncomfortable, so we rush to distract ourselves or build a workaround or create a new habit so the discomfort doesn't sting as much. And while that can help in the moment, it doesn't erase the avoidance. The root remains. True transformation isn't about working around ourselves. It's about meeting ourselves fully. This is more than just shadow work. I call it soul work because the shadow doesn't only reveal darkness, it reveals light. It reveals the power that's been hidden within it. And here's the paradox. Without light, you cannot possibly see a way through. All you have access to are the same solutions the dark has already created, the patterns, habits, and defenses that orbit the problem itself. Light is what allows us to see beyond the cycle. It illuminates the other side, the possibility that was always there, but hidden. Without that light, we stay trapped in the dark, repeating, recycling, mistaking avoidance for change. That's why it isn't about pretending the avoidance never existed. It's about bringing it into awareness, sitting with the discomfort we've been conditioned to escape, and learning how to stay present with the parts of ourselves we've been conditioned to abandon. Without facing the truth of the past, The so-called new self isn't really new. It's just another version of the same operating system, still shaped by avoidance, survival, and ego's clever programming. Now let's talk about the seduction of this phrase we hear everywhere: be delusional or be Delulu. In the modern self-help and spiritual world, it's presented like a mantra. We're told, step into the version of yourself you want to become. Act as though your future self is already here. To be delusional in this sense is to believe in a version of yourself and of your life that others might call impossible. It's stepping outside the narrow box of circumstance, expectation, and social programming. And here's the thing: delusion here isn't foolishness. It's vision. It gives us permission to imagine the life we want, even when the evidence isn't here yet. Without that leap, no transformation can begin. Neville Goddard called this the power of I am, the words that shape your reality by assumption. Joe Dispenza translates this into neuroscience, how new thoughts and emotions can literally rewire your brain, breaking the habit of being the old self. This teaching is powerful. It liberates us from the prison of circumstance. It reminds us that our identities are not fixed, and we can create a new version of ourselves. But, and this is important, there's danger in rushing too quickly into the new. If we leap straight into a new identity without facing the old one, what we think is vision may just be a mask. What looks like creation might still be rooted in avoidance, trauma, or ego's clever disguises. And I want to pause here on the word delusion because it's important to make a distinction. Now, when we hear the word delusion, it usually has a negative meaning. In psychology, a delusion is defined as a fixed false belief, one that doesn't change even when the evidence shows otherwise. And in a way, isn't that what happens when we cling to old identities or avoidance patterns? We convince ourselves it's a truth, but really, it's a distortion. In Eastern philosophy, this is what's called avidya, ignorance or misperception or misseeing, which is why disillusionment is so sacred. It's the moment those distortions begin to dissolve and the truth starts to reveal itself. That's why delusion without disillusionment isn't transformation. It's just another costume. Real vision is born only when it grows out of soul work, when you've met yourself, faced the fractures, and reclaimed the power hidden inside them. But here's the truth. Delusion alone can't sustain a life. If you've lived delusionally long enough, you will eventually collide with disillusionment. This is the moment you realize just how much of who you are was never freely chosen. You begin to see the structures that shaped you: family expectations, societal narratives, economic pressures, the survival strategies. And disillusionment can feel very heavy. It can feel like disappointment, even betrayal. You might even ask, how did I fall for that? Why didn't I see it sooner? But here's the shift. This stage is not failure. It's awakening. To be disillusioned is to see clearly. If you give yourself permission to see clearly, it strips away the illusions and exposes the programs that shaped you. And as painful as that clarity can feel, it's the beginning of something new, the first doorway to soul work. And this is where I want to pause for a moment, because how we frame awakening really matters. In spiritual circles, you'll often hear people talk about the stages of awakening. Some say there are 4, some say there are 7, some say there are 12. And often the first stage is called the bliss stage. I'll save a deeper dive for this on another episode, but here's the connection I want to make. That so-called bliss isn't the true bliss at all. It's the same illusion I've been naming, mistaking change itself for awakening. In my last episode, I talked about how ignorance can create the false perception of bliss. This is another version of that. Real awakening isn't the bypass. It's when the discomfort rises, and instead of pushing away, you actually meet it. So we'll go deeper into the stages another time, but for now, let's come back to where we were, because the path of awakening isn't about escaping. It's about meeting yourself fully. And that begins with what Jung called the shadow. Carl Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is the work of disillusionment, seeing the programs, the shadows, the wounds that have shaped us. Without this step, what we call transformation is only repetition. The ego gives us the illusion of choice while keeping us bound inside the same system. And if we leap into a new self without meeting these fractures, we bypass reality. In psychology, it's called spiritual bypassing. In practice, it's avoidance disguised as transformation. But shadow work alone isn't enough if it stays in the realm of theory or concept. At some point, you have to step into the mirror and meet yourself. This is where disillusionment becomes not just awakening, but embodiment. True growth requires disillusionment. This is not about despair, but about clarity. Disillusionment is the act of meeting yourself as you are, recognizing how you've been programmed and how you've been fragmented and how you've been pulled away from your essence. Without this grounding, being delusional risks becoming nothing more than pretending, redecorating the cage rather than stepping out of it. So let me ask you, where do you notice yourself redecorating the cage instead of stepping out of it? Is it in the habits you keep trying to fix, the relationships you cycle through, or the ways you distract yourself when discomfort rises? Take a breath and consider, where in your life are you bypassing instead of meeting yourself fully? Every time you avoid yourself, you bypass your nervous system, your emotions, your mind, and in doing so, you lose access to the depth of spirit. Spirit itself is never broken. It remains whole, but our experience of it becomes clouded by distraction and avoidance. Disillusionment, then, is sacred. It is the admission, I am distracted, fragmented, disconnected. And the moment you make that admission, you step into soul work, the devotion of reclaiming the energy tied to old identities. Soul work is more than shadow work. The shadow doesn't only reveal darkness, it reveals the light and the power hidden within it. This is why meeting yourself isn't about fixing or healing, it's about integrating. This is what Jung calls individuation, what the Yoga Sutras name the dissolving of avidya, what modern psychology recognizes as integration, all pointing to the same truth, that when you face the whole of yourself, you return to wholeness. And once you've met yourself in this way, the question naturally arises, now what? What do I do with this clarity? Clarity invites responsibility. Once you see that you are living a version of yourself handed down by others, you must ask, who am I really? What does this realization mean for me? How will I, not my fear, choose to step into my authentic self? This is the turning point, the moment where disillusionment shifts from despair into possibility. You begin to recognize that although you became who you are through circumstance, you are free to choose differently moving forward. Disillusionment changes everything. Once you've faced the fractures, integrated the hurt, and reclaimed the energy tied to old identities, your vision is no longer rooted in avoidance. What once seemed like delusion, embodying a future self, stepping into what feels unrealistic, now arises from alignment. To become the person you want to be, you must begin by embodying that person now. Identity isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you practice moment by moment. Just as you were unconsciously shaped by the beliefs and expectations of others, you can now consciously shape yourself through intention and action. Delusion begins the vision. Disillusionment brings the truth, and together they open the doorway to self-authorship. At this point, being delusional is no longer avoidance. It becomes creation. It's acting beyond the limits of your past, not because you're pretending, but because you've truly met your past, absorbed its lessons, and have chosen differently. To be delusional is not to deny reality, but to expand it, to see beyond programming, to face the disappointment of disillusionment, and to step into the responsibility of choice. In this paradox, we discover freedom, the freedom to imagine, to awaken, and to become. So let me ask you, what do you think it means to escape from yourself? Have you ever tried to avoid a part of who you are, your feelings, your habits, or experiences? And what happens when you did? And what would it look like instead to face or accept those parts of yourself? If these questions stir something in you, don't just let them pass you by. Take a few minutes to meet yourself more deeply. Something I haven't touched on yet is how this process shows up in the body, because it's one thing to understand illusion and disillusionment within the mind, but the body carries its own story. It holds the signals, the survival patterns, the energy we've abandoned. Think of the body as an instrument, a tuning fork for consciousness. When we tune it, we restore connection. When we ignore it, we risk bypassing the very messages that could set us free. And I'll be dedicating a whole episode on this soon, drawing on Bentov's insights, Eastern philosophy, and modern psychology to explore the body as a vessel and the nervous system as a communication network for spirit. So for now, let's circle back to why disillusionment is the sacred key to awakening. Disillusionment is sacred because it begins with a simple, honest admission. I am fragmented. I am distracted. I have abandoned myself. This isn't about judgment, it's about remembering that meeting what you've avoided is the very doorway to freedom. When you stop bypassing and start meeting discomfort, you begin to reclaim the energy scattered into old identities. You tune the instrument of your being. Integration is what dissolves illusion. It restores communication between body, mind, and spirit. Emotions are no longer prisons, but messengers. The body is no longer an obstacle, but a vessel responding to consciousness. And spirit, always whole, is remembered through the alignment of these layers. From this place, being delusional takes on a different meaning. It is no longer bypassing or pretending. It's not another mask layered over an old wound. Instead, it becomes the courage to live in a vision aligned with truth. Goddard's I am becomes a declaration rooted in authenticity, not fantasy. Dispenza's rewiring becomes integration, not avoidance. Jung's shadow work becomes individuation, wholeness through integration. The Yoga Sutra's avidya dissolves, revealing the self beneath conditioning. And even Bentov's instrument of consciousness, the body as a tuning fork, plays in harmony with higher frequencies of being. This is disillusion after disillusionment, vision born from truth. This work is ongoing. You may fall back into old habits, new walls, or discover new layers of programming. The point isn't to outrun these truths, but to meet them again and again. Each cycle of disillusionment clears vision, deepens authenticity, and makes being delusional less about fantasy and more about freedom. Because in the end, the greatest delusion isn't pretending to be someone new. It's believing you can escape yourself. Pretending is surface level. It can be dropped, but you cannot run your own inner reality. No matter how much you disguise yourself, distract yourself, or try to distance yourself from aspects of who you are, your emotions, history, flaws, or essence, you remain you, The illusion lies thinking you can truly separate from yourself. Soul work is self-confrontation and self-acceptance. The real challenge in life isn't avoiding who you are, but facing and integrating it. Escaping the self is impossible. Transformation doesn't begin with avoidance. It begins with meeting yourself fully, and only when daring to step beyond what seems impossible. The greatest delusion is believing you can escape yourself. Transformation is not found in bypassing, but in meeting, not pretending, but in integrating, not in clinging to the body or the emotions as identity, but in recognizing them as vessels and messengers of consciousness. To be disillusioned is to see clearly. To be delusional after disillusionment is to create from clarity. From disillusionment comes alignment. From alignment comes true creation. And from creation, we remember we were never broken, only learning to tune the instrument. So let me ask you, where in your life are you still trying to escape yourself? And what might happen instead if you chose to meet that part of you? Let's return to where we began. The illusion you can't escape is yourself. You can change your clothes, your titles, your roles. You can even try on new identities. But no matter how far you run, your truth will always meet you. Transformation doesn't begin with pretending. It begins with disillusionment, with the courage to face what you've abandoned, believed, and have been programmed to carry. Because once you've met yourself fully, the impossible stops being fantasy. It becomes alignment. And my invitation is this: don't run, don't bypass, meet yourself, and then dare to become more. And thank you for listening, for daring to meet yourself, and for walking the path of becoming. I'm Veronica signing off. I'll see you on the next episode.